Okay, so good morning. Today's daf that we're going to learn is daf Nun, daf 50 of Maseches Yevamos. What? Yeah, sorry. And we are a day ahead because tomorrow, God willing, we'll be taking a break because I have a 6 a.m. flight and will not be able to join. But we are a day ahead, so as a result, we're in good shape. Now, we completed the fourth chapter, very, very meaty chapter, fourth chapter of Yevamos yesterday, and now we are on to chapter 5. This chapter, this is in the middle of Daf Nun Amud Aleph 50a. We're going to be talking about two concepts that we have talked about previously in connection with Yibum. One is Ma'amar. Now, as a reminder, Ma'amar is this idea of basically it's saying it's the same kind of statement that one says when one does Kedushin, that in Kedushin it's Harayat Mekudeshetli Kedas Moshe Yisrael. But in Ma'amar, again, it's a statement of intention to go through the Yibum process with somebody, but that's not in and of itself the Yibum process. Yibum is only consummated through, marital relations, cohabitation, and so we're going to now talk about this concept of Ma'amar, and the other concept, which does have a biblical component to it, is the concept of get. Ordinarily, a get is a divorce decree. And so, but what happens if one gives a divorce decree in the context where chalitza is required? So we're going to see that basically both of these are a start to the relevant piece. So Ma'amar is sort of like a precursor to Yibum, and get is a precursor to chalitza. And so we'll talk about them in greater detail today. And we're going to begin sort of in an odd place, because you would think that we should just begin by saying what they are, the fact that the rabbis like the idea of Ma'amar, the fact that get is not really relevant, but that's not how we begin. We sort of begin in a backhanded way, which will address at least the fact that get is not really relevant. But here, let's take a look and we'll see exactly what they say. So we're going to begin again with this concept. So, did I cover everything in the introduction? So again, one of the things that we have seen is that if somebody does Ma'amar with a Yevamah, with a widow, so again, Reuven is married to Rachel, Reuven dies, and now Shimon, his brother, wants to do Yibum. If he does Ma'amar with Rachel, then in order to undo that relationship, not only will there need to be chalitza, but there will also need to be a get. And on the other hand, if Reuven dies and now Shimon wants to do chalitza with Rachel, if he gives a get to her, then none of the other brothers are allowed to perform Yibum. It is an indication of an intention to do chalitza, and effectively you can no longer do Yibum. And now that the person has given the get, that the prohibitions that apply for him to marry certain relatives of the chalutza and for her to marry certain of his relatives, all those prohibitions go into effect. So he can't marry her daughter, he can't marry her sister, he can't marry her mother, he can't marry all these different relations that she has, because he will have done the divorce decree, even though that isn't really the thing that he's supposed to be doing. He's supposed to do chalitza, but of course, once he does chalitza, then all of these things would doubly kick in. So, okay, so that with that background and reminder, so now let's get us started. So, Rabbi Gamliel Omer, that's what we're going to begin with. Rabbi Gamliel says the following: Ein get achar get. There is no meaning to a second get, meaning if I give a get to one woman let's say again, Reuven is married to Rachel and Rivka, who are not related in any way. They just have Rachel and Rivka. He just likes race names. And now Shimon gives a get first to Rachel and then a get to Rivka. The get to Rivka has no ramifications. He's already done a get, so there's nothing. There is no additional prohibition to his doing anything with Rivka's family. So he would be allowed to marry Rivka's sister as a result of this, and so that's totally fine. That is not a prohibition, because there is no connection any longer, according to Rabbi Gamliel. The second get, you've done everything that you could. Below mamar achar mamar, and similarly, if you've done mamar with one of the co-wives, so you've done mamar with Rachel, and now you want to try to do mamar with Leah, nothing has happened. Ve'ein be'ilah achar be'ilah. Similarly, if you actually engaged in yibum with Rachel, then the yibum that you try to do after that with Rivka is totally useless, totally pointless. You haven't done anything. Now, what you have done is sinned, because you're not allowed to have relations with your with Rivka, because Rivka is a former wife of your brother, and former wives of brothers are considered prohibited outside the context of yibum, and this yibum that you tried to do with her is not a valid yibum. So as a result, that it would not work. Below chalitza, achar chalitza, and of course there's no chalitza after chalitza. Meaning, if you did chalitza with Rachel, then that's the chalitza. You are now Rachel and Rivka are now free to marry whomever they want. You, the person who did the chalitza with Rachel, are not allowed to marry any of Rachel's core relatives. You can't marry her sister, you can't marry her mother, you can't marry her daughter, because of the fact that you are now she is now a chalutza for you. So as a result, we treat her like a gerusha, and a gerusha, you're not allowed to, divorcee, you're not allowed to, if somebody divorces somebody, you're not allowed to, that person's not allowed to marry, he's not allowed to marry his ex-wife's sister, daughter, or mother. And so as a result, that all that applies only to Rachel. And if you then try and do chalitza with Rivka, doesn't make a difference. You haven't done anything. But the Chachamim say the following: Yesh get achar get, yesh mamar achar mamar. Actually, there is some ramification to doing a second get. There is some ramification to doing a second mamar. Basically, now presumably where we're understanding at this moment is that the second get causes the second wife, meaning Rivka in this instance. Again, Reuven was married to Rachel and Rivka, and Shimon has done get one with Rachel and now get two with Rivka. So now not only can he not marry Rachel's mother, sister, and daughter, but he also cannot marry Rivka's mother, sister, and daughter, because he did the get. Even though he didn't need to, he could have just done chalitza and with Rachel and would have been fine. But he made a mistake. He did two gets. Similarly, if there's mamar after mamar, so that means that if he did mamar with Rachel and mamar with Rivka, he's going to need to give both Rivka and Rachel a get to undo them. Below achar be'ilah, below achar chalitza klum. However, everybody agrees, meaning even the Chachamim agree with Rabban Gamliel, that once you've done be'ilah, once there has been a yibum, once there has been that marital relationship, so then a second marital relationship does not change under the underlying initial marital relationship, and you have not actually married the second woman. You've engaged in an appropriate relationship, but you've not actually married or done anything to the second woman. And similarly, once you've done chalitza, there's no ramification to the second chalitza whatsoever. You're not going to become suddenly, unlike the get after get situation, you're not going to be suddenly forbidden to marry Rivka's mother, sister, and daughter. Okay, so now that we've done that, now that we've given these basic rules, we're now going to go through two situations. So first, I will note that when we did all of what we just did, we are essentially assuming that there were two co-wives. That's really the situation. First, we're going to say,
Yes,
what
Father.
happens if we only have one widow? What, and you do two actions. So we're going to go through, there are a total of, now, it makes no sense to have a get after get, or mamar after mamar, or even chalitza after chalitza, or yibum after yibum with one woman, meaning obviously the first one is the only thing that matters. So we're going to look, that means that for each of the four possibilities, mamar, get, chalitza, and yibum, there are three second actions that could be taken with respect to that woman. And we're going to now go through all of those 4 times 3, or 12 possibilities. So let's take a look. So you got it on the screen just so that it hopefully will make it a little bit easier to follow. We got all the first action and the second action. So again, Ketzad. So when we now deal with it, so even though the opening of our Mishnah talked about one action, 2 actions with 2 women, we're now going to switch to 2 actions with 1 woman. And so Kate said, what's the story in that situation with 2 actions with 1 woman? So asa mamar bivimto v'nasan laget. If first he did his mamar with his yevamot and then he gave her a get, so tzricha hemena chalitza. So he did mamar, that's a precursor to yibum, but then he did get. So that indicates that it's time that they're not going to marry. And so he now must do chalitza. He's not allowed to do yibum anymore. So mamar and then chalitza. What about asa mamar v'chalitza? Now he did mamar first and then chalitza. So again, tzricha hemena get. Because the mamar has some impact, the chalitza alone is not sufficient. He also does need to give a get. Next category. Number 3, asa mamar uval. What happens if he did mamar and then val? Hareza kamitzasa. That is exactly what should happen. So so essentially, this is the, if I were to be the one who have written the Mishnah, it shows my lack of brilliance. I would have just begun with asa mamar uval, harezo kamitzvasa. That's what you're supposed to do. But what we've done here in this context is taught a whole bunch of other other rules associated with it. So we know what we're doing is we're effectively telling you there is going to be 2 actions that are required with respect to the woman, but we also know that once we talk about 2 actions with respect to the woman, we're going to give you every other permutation of those double actions. So again, the third category of mamar and then yibum, they are married appropriately. That's exactly what's supposed to happen. So now we turn to get. Nasan get v'asa mamar, tzricha get v'chalitza. If you first gave a get and then you did mamar, well, now that mamar effectively undoes the get, but doesn't really undo the get, because now you're not allowed to marry her because you did the get, and you can and now that you did mamar, you need a new get. So you need a new get and you need chalitza. That's what you're going to end up having to do, because the mamar that you did after you did the get does have an effect. Nasan get uval. What happens if you gave a get and then you actually had relations with her? Tzricha get v'chalitza. Well, the cohabitation constitutes an act of marriage. It's as if they were trying to marry, but because there was the get at the beginning, we don't allow them to stay married. So as a result, she requires a get and chalitza. Nasan get the chalatz. If he gave a get and then did chalitza, ein achar chalitza klum. So the chalitza is totally fine. The get was a precursor to the chalitza, and now you did the chalitza, so everything is fine. So now we've gone through the first 6 possibilities, and now we go to number 7, and now we talk about what happens if you did chalitza first, and then you did one of the 3 acts. So chalatz, if you did chalitza first, v'asar mamar nasan get uval, doesn't make a difference what you do afterwards, or obal, or what, and now we'll do the last 3 as well. Or if you have bal, if you do yibum first, v'asa mamar nasan get v'chalitz, and then you do mamar, or you do a get, and then you do chalitza. So again, if bal or chalatz is the first action, Ein achar chalitza klum. You haven't done anything after the chalitza. Now, of course, this is a very odd phraseology because really it should say ein achar chalitza o beila klum. And indeed, take a look at Rashi, last Rashi on the daf, and he notes that exact point. That is going on the first of the two statements. It was on the statement of chalatz va'asar mamar nasan get uval. We could have put these words at that moment. Now, what about this language, the second language, the language of the Be'ila? The Katani O Baal Ba'asa Mamar Onasan get the Chalatz. It should have said, Ein Achar Bia Klum, that the whatever happens after the Bia doesn't have any meaning. And in the Gemara, we're going to ask exactly that question. But for the important purposes at the moment, we're going to say that in fact, that what we're saying is that you've done everything you need to do, and everything is hunky-dory. Nothing further needs to be done. So let's take a look at all of these 6 cases. So if you do chalitza and then mamar, nothing's further. The chalitza prevented the second action from having any meaning. The chalitza and then the get, again, nothing further is required because the get had no meaning. If you give a get to some stam woman on the street, to any woman on the street, that doesn't make any difference. You haven't done anything. You had to be married for it to have any relevance. If you do chalitza and then yibum, again, the chalitza is what took effect. You've now had an illegal marital relationship because you're not allowed to have relationship with your brother's ex-wife, your brother's widow, after even outside the context of yibum, and the yibum doesn't count once you've done chalitza. So as a result, you have nothing further is required. They're not married, and he is just committed a sin. But in any event, nothing further needs to be done. They're not in fact married. So yibum. Now, what happens if you do yibum and then mamar? Again, they're married. The yibum took effect. Mamar doesn't mean anything. What if you do yibum and then get? Well, 1 second. In that situation, the get is still a good get, right? You gave a get to your wife because yibum made her your wife, get made her divorced, and so now you are divorced. Yibum and then chalitza, again, nothing further. They're married. You did yibum. That's the story. So that's how I'm understanding where things currently stand in this Mishnah. So now that we did that, now we need to go to the 2 women case. So that was, again, what we talked about at the very beginning of our Mishnah. We go now to achas yevamah, achas liyavam echad, ve'achas shtei yevamos liyavam echad, whether you have 1 yevamah to 1 yavam or 2 yevamot to 1 yavam. Ketzad, how do those all cases come out? So now we're going to go through the cases of 2 yevamot. So again, now we have 16 cases because now we do care about get after get and mamar after mamar because you're doing the mamar, the second mamar is with a different woman and the second get is with a different woman. So we're going to take a look at each of those cases. So let's go through them. Okay. So so we go through asa mamar bezova mamar bezo. You do mamar to both of the women. Sricho shnei getin v'chalitza. Each of the women require a get, and then they require chalitza. And this is obviously according to the chachamim, because remember that Rabbi Gamliel in the beginning of our Mishnah, Rabbi Gamliel said ein mamar achar mamar, implying that the second woman does not need a get. So this is clearly according to the chachamim in the Mishnah. So we got mamar achar mamar. So if you got asa mamar bezova mamar bezo, tzricha shnei gittin v'chalitza. You need 2 gittin and you need chalitza. Mamar bezo v'get lazo. What if you do a mamar with this one and a get with the other one? Well, tzricha get. You need a get for the first one because you did mamar with her, and now you need chalitza because. Why do you need to? And by the way, in the first case, why do you need to do chalitza? Because you did mamar with 2 women, and you're not allowed to do yibum with 2 women. And so, as a result, we basically undermined your ability to do yibum, and now you have to do chalitza. That's the way I'm going to explain it. We'll see whether that's in fact the case in the Gemara eventually. So mamar bezo we get bezo. So tzricha get v'chalitza. So you need to do a get with the first one that you did mamar with, but now since you did a get with the second one, you have to do chalitza, because get is a precursor to chalitza, and chalitza, basically wins out, because we don't want to allow the marriage to happen after the get has been given. So mamar bezo ubal etzo. Now, what if you did mamar with one and then you actually did yibum with the other? Well, again, just like mamar and mamar, we're going to have a problem, because you can't do yibum with two. And your mamar with the first one was an indication that you were planning to do yibum with that one. And so now you've effectively married both of them. So tzricha shnei gittin v'chalitza, you need to divorce both of them, and then you need to do a chalitza. Mamar bezo v'chalatz lazo. What happens if you did mamar with one and then you did chalitza with the other one? Well, harishon not tzricha get. You don't need to do another chalitza. At least we're going to propose that that's what we're going to say. But you do need a get with the first one, because you had mamar with her. So now that we have now covered all of the possibilities if mamar was the first action. So now we turn to get being the first action. And again, this Mishnah is a long Mishnah. It's going to be the one Mishnah for the entire parak. So get lazo, but get lazo. If you have a get that you give to one woman, and now you give a get to the second one, so you give a get first to Rivka and first to Rachel and then to Rivka. So tzrika zemena chalitza. They still need a chalitza, because chalitza is the biblical action, and we are always going to require the biblical action, either chalitza or yibum. So get lazo ubalazo. If you have a get to the first one and now you had relations with the second one, so as a result you have done yibum with the second one. Well, tzricha get v'chalitza. The second one requires a get because you've married her, but you've already indicated with your first get an intention to do chalitza. So we're not going to let you stay married to her, and we're going to say that you need to have a chalitza for both of them. Get lazo umamar bezo. If you have a get for the first one and mamar with the second one, again, tzricha get b'chalitza. Again, the one with mamar requires a get, and both of them require chalitza, because once you've given a get, we've indicated an intention to do chalitza. Get lazo v'chalatz lazo. Now, what if you did a get for this one and chalitza with the second one? Well, again, ein achar chalitza klum. It doesn't make a difference which one you did the chalitza with, as chalitza covers all of them, and so as a result, nothing more needs to be done because you did the chalitza. Chalatz v'chalatz. Now we're going to go through what happens if the chalitza is your first action. So chalatz v'chalatz, chalatz v'asa mamar, nasan get, uval, whatever of the four actions you take after chalitza, or obal uval, obal v'asa mamar, nasan get v'chalatz, or if you have the two yibums, or you do a yibum and then you do mamar, or yibum and then you do get, or yibum and then you do chalitza. So we've now covered all of the other 8 situations. All of the other 8 situations, we're going to see nothing further is required. And again, ein achar chalitza klum. Again, this odd language that we commented about earlier, and there's no validity to anything after the chalitza. And so we see, basically, again, you do chalitza first, nothing more is required. It's all over. Of course, if you do yibum after chalitza, there was a violation of the Torah prohibition of having relations with your brother's widow or your brother's ex-wife, but there's no legal ongoing ramifications of that relationship. Similarly, if you do yibum, so then again, if you do 2 yibums, the number one woman is married, right? So you're married to the first one. If you then tried to do yibum with number 2, you didn't do anything. You violated the Torah. Again, you still violated that Torah prohibition against having relations with number 2. But again, the second action doesn't matter. You're done, and that's the story. So now we've covered all of these rules. So now we continue with bein yavam echad l'shtei yevamot, bein shnei yevamin liyevama achat. So all what we've just done is not only the rules with respect to 1 man and 2 women, but it's also the rules with respect to 2 men and 1 woman. So we could have gone through, I could go through this entire situation, but every outcome, if instead it said, instead of it saying first Yevamah, second Yevamah, it said first Yavam and second Yavam, that would be the same situation. That's what the Mishnah is saying, that it doesn't make a difference if we're dealing with Shimon and Levi, and Shimon does Mamar and then Levi does Mamar, or etc. All of these situations apply as well. So these are all the different rules. So again, all these rules regarding two Yevamot also apply if there are two men. I should say two Yavams who are taking the actions. So again, all right. So that's the next rule of the Mishnah. If now, what did we say earlier? We said that if one does chalitza and then does mamar or gives a get or has relations, baal va'asa mamar v'nasan get b'chalitz. Going back to the one woman situation, in all those situations, ein achar chalitza klum. We said that there's nothing that happens after chalitza, and and we're going to now expand that rule. We said that doesn't make a difference as long as you did chalitza and then or yibum first. So then everything that happens afterwards doesn't matter. So bein b'tchila, bein be'emtza, bein b'sof. Doesn't make a difference whether the chalitza happens at the end, at the beginning, in the middle, or the end. So whoa, that seems a little bit confusing. So what does that mean? So Rashi helps us out. So when it comes to chalitza, 4 lines down in the widest lines of Rashi, ben b'tchila, ben be'emtza, ben mamar leget. If between the mamar and the get could go get lazo, b'chalatz lazo, because of asa b'mamar. So if you did a get with one, and then you did chalitza with another, and then you did mamar, b'ba'alas haget, and then you did mamar with her or with the one who you gave a get, lo mahani mamar. Then the mamar has no effect whatsoever. Below by get la mamaro, and there's no requirement for a further get. So it doesn't make a difference when you have the chalitza at the very beginning. It's very clear that once you've done chalitza, nothing more matters. No legal ramification from any of the 4 actions. Not only that, but if you did it in the middle, meaning if you did chalitza after get before mamar, again, also no ramifications. B'sof, if you did achar mamar v'get, b'chalatz, if you do mamar and then get and then chalitza, ein achareh klum. There's nothing further that's required. B'chalitza gemurahi, you've done a complete chalitza. V'ihadar avid mamar, if you did mamar after that, lo boy get to chalitza gerishin gemurinhi. It is a complete chalitza. It's a complete separation. Bekama belav gamor aleha. And now there is a prohibition to have relations with her. But aval gav to chalitza psula, even if the chalitza was not a fully valid chalitza. Even though it's a not a second. Psula, chalitza psula means that even if the chalitza is not fully active against every woman. We saw this concept a few weeks ago, that sometimes if you have that there can be a chalitza that could work only with the woman that you're doing chalitza with, because you already have another connection with another woman of the co-wives, and so it's possible that you could need multiple chalitzas. And again, we haven't really addressed that topic. I can't remember whether or not this is going to be covered in this parak or not, but we will see that more going forward. So, all right, so that is with respect to chalitza, that when it comes to chalitza, it could happen. A chalitza could be fully effective if it happens. Of course, it's fully effective if it happens first. It could be even fully effective if it happens in the middle. For example, if it happens after a get, and it could be even fully effective even if it happens at the end. If you have mamar and then get and then chalitza, it could be fully effective. So in all those situations, a mamar after that would not have any impact. So now we take a look b'habiyah, when it comes to having relations. So bisman shehi betchila ein acharei klum. If in fact the be'ila happens at the very beginning, well then clearly nothing more can happen after it. Meaning that any mamar that would happen after it, or any yibum that would happen after it, and any get to another woman that would happen after it, another of the co-wives that would happen after it, would have no ramifications whatsoever. Okay. However, but if that cohabitation, if that yibum act takes place not as your first act, but as the second act, well then it could have some ramifications. And so let's take a look at Rashi helps us out again here. Hey via be'emsa could go and get lazo uba lazo. So if you give one woman a get and then you do the yibum with a second woman, and now you did mamar with a third woman, the mamar that you did after that yibum still has an effect. Because of the initial get action, it effectively undermined all of the later actions. And so it's not a perfect yibum that was done. And so as a result, there is ramifications to actions that happen later. Ubisof. And what about in the case of the sof, where the yibum happens last? So get lazo umamar lazo. If you do a get for this one and then mamar for that one, b'chazar uba al ha'achas, and then you have relations with one of them, and now so you try to do yibum with one of them, and as we saw earlier, that yibum is not a valid yibum. Yesh achar biyazu zikas yivamin. There's still, even after this yibum, after this attempted yibum, there is still a zika relationship with the other co-wives. And now it's not enough to do the get. You need to have, if you want to separate yourself from that woman with whom you had the yibum, you need not only chalitza, but you also need a get. Okay, so now what we've done is we've shown that there is in fact, and it was reflected in fact in these charts that we had above. There's a big difference between chalitza, which sort of like whenever it happens, basically you're done with the biblical actions. There's no requirement for yibum any longer. But when it comes to yibum, it does make a big difference when it happens. Only if it happens at the very beginning, then there will be no more ramifications of chalitza or yibum going forward. But if afterwards but if it happens later, if it happens after something else, then possibly it could be a problem. Okay, so that is the story with respect to and the difference between yibum and chalitza. And now Rabbi Nechemia adds a new opinion. Rabbi Nechemia Omer, achas be'ilu v'achas chalitza, whether it's whether you take the action, the biblical action to do yibum or the biblical action to do chalitza, bein betchila, bein be'emtza, bein besof, ein acharei klum. He disagrees, and we've set it up, this disagreement, right? So what we said first is that it doesn't make a difference what you do after chalitza, meaning once chalitza happens, that's it. But when it comes to yibum, we had said the first opinion was it does make a difference, and if you have yibum at the beginning, you're great. But if you have yibum in the middle or at the end, then even after that, some further actions could be required. Whereas Nechemia says no, doesn't matter. Once you do be'ila or chalitza, once you do yibum or chalitza, that ends the biblical actions, and nothing more can happen afterwards. So, so any attempt to do mamar or get will not have any further ramification to the various co-wives and their relatives. Okay, so now we're going to take a look at the Gemara. And the Gemara is going to begin and try to understand the dispute between Rabbi Gamliel and the rabbis. So let's take a look. So, ad kan lo pligi. when it comes to the argument between Rabbi Gamliel and the rabbis, they only disagree. They only disagree with respect to one get after another or one mamar after another. Get echad b'yevama u'mamar echad b'yevama mahani. But when it comes to a get with one and then mamar with another, that actually does make a difference. Okay, my timer. So what's the difference? So Amar Rabbanan get b'yevama mahani. Why is it that the rabbis say that the get given to a woman is effective? Meaning, why do we have this concept of get being making a difference whatsoever? So mishum de mahani ba'alma, because in an ordinary course of a case of a husband and wife, a get is effective. And now, if we were to say in the case of chalitza that it made no difference, well, then Amri, then what would people say? That it, if ordinarily a get serves to send a woman away, and so does chalitza. Mid get lo mahani, chalitza nami lo mahani, and so we'll think. Somebody who's not very well versed in the Torah will think, well, if a get does not work to this particular woman, then it must be that chalitza also wouldn't work. And so what will happen? So a person will think, so again, Shimon will think, I did chalitza with Rachel, but you know what? If I know that a get wouldn't have worked with Rachel, and a get is sort of like chalitza, and so so presumably my chalitza wasn't valid either, and so as a result, he will think that he could go ahead and now do yibum with Rachel, and of course that is not true. After chalitza, you're not allowed to do yibum, and indeed, any such action would be a biblical violation of marrying your brother's ex-wife, and so as a result, people will end up violating the Torah because they will think that just as get doesn't work for a yivama, so too chalitza doesn't work. All right, and now my time amor rabbanan mamar b'yivama mahani, and why is it that the rabbis established or had mamar also make a difference? Why is it that it has any effect? Again, neither the concept of get nor mamar are written in the Torah regarding these women. So mishum de mahani ba'alma. Again, mamar speaking does have effect when you ordinarily marry a woman, when you say hareya mikudeshesli and she accepts the ring. So to amrat lo mahani, because again, if you say that would not have any effect, Amri people will say mamar liknos or via liknos. Just as mamar affects to have initiate a marriage, the acquisition of a woman, so too having relations has the effect of creating the marriage relationship. And so as a result, we'll say that if in fact you're now saying that that speaking has no effect on a yivama, so then we'll think that bia also will have no effect on yivama. And what will happen? And so as a result, the person will think that there was no yibum with the first woman, and so he'll do yibum with the second woman, and as a result, now you'll end up having done married to two of them. So, or you'll do mamar with the first one, excuse me, and now you'll do yibum after the with the second. Let me just make sure I got that right. No, you'll do. I said it right the first time. So again, what will end up happening if mamar doesn't work, right? We'll assume that yibum won't, that having relations won't work either, and so as a result, Shimon, after Reuven dies, will first have relations with Rachel. He'll say, "Hey, mamar didn't work with her, so presumably relations doesn't work with her, and so now I'm going to go and marry and do yibum with the second wife, with the second co-wife, with Rivka." And so as a result, Shimon will now end up having had relations with both of Reuven's ex-wives, with both of Reuven's widows. And of course, that is definitely prohibited. And so as a result, we want to make sure that that doesn't happen. So as a result, the rabbis say, we're going to say that Ma'amar has an effect. Both get has an effect, telling us that you have to do chalitza, and Ma'amar has an effect that it starts the marriage relationship, starts the Yibum relationship with that particular co-wife. All right. Umay Taima Amar Rabbanan Bia Psula Yesh Acharei Klum. And so why in the situation did the rabbi say that in our Mishnah again, we said that the rabbis disagreed with Rabbi Nehemiah. They said that if Yibum doesn't happen first, so for example, you have Yibum after get or Yibum after Ma'amar to another woman, it doesn't have the full effect to prevent further actions from having an effect. So why is that? Why is it not a valid action? So Amra Ibiach or Haget he, if you were to say that the woman cohabited, after the get was given. So again, Shimon gives a get to Rachel, and then he has relations with her. Well, Gzeira Bia Achar Haget Mishum Bia Achar Chalitza. We need to be concerned that based on having relations after a get because of having relations after Chalitza. The Bia Achar Mamarhi and similar. So that is the problem. If we allow if we say that the relations after a get undermines the get, well, then people will think that you could also have relations after chalitza, and it would undermine the chalitza. But that's not true. Relations after chalitza is a biblical prohibition of having relations with your brother's ex-wife or your brother's widow. And so as a result, we have to say that you cannot do bia after get. And so as a result, that bia after a get was given is not a fully effective bia. Okay, whereas the ibias achar mamar, however, if the bia comes after the mamar, gzeira bia achar mamar, mishum bia achar bia. And again, similarly, if the mamar is to woman number one, if the mamar is to Rachel, and now Shimon has relations with Rivka, well, that's going to be a problem, because we're worried that if we were to allow that to happen, that what would happen is he would think that he could also do that even after having had bia with Rachel. He would think that even after doing yibum with Rachel, he could do yibum with Rivka. And of course, the answer to that is we know that you can only do yibum with one of Reuven's widows. You can't do yibum with both of Reuven's widows. And so therefore, we're not going to allow the bia with the second woman to have full effect. We're going to diminish its effect because we're worried that people will come to think that one could do bia after bia. So again, the point is that what the Gemara is asking is, if mamar and get are not valid biblically, why shouldn't a biblical action that happens after them have full effect? And the answer is that we're worried that if we give that biblical action, that biblical bia, full effect, that yibum action full effect, then people will come to make very big and very serious mistakes that will end up resulting in their having an illegal sexual relationship. So now, umay taima amar rabbanan hai chalitza psula ein acharei klum. Well, why not say the same concern with respect to chalitza? We said in our Mishnah that when it comes to chalitza, it doesn't make a difference what happened before it. The chalitza has validity, and there's no further action that can be that has any ramifications after the chalitza. Well, the answer is Amrei My ligzor, what is there that we should have a gezerah about? Nigzor chalitza achar haget mishum chalitza achar chalitza. Should we prohibit? Should we make a gezerah because of chalitza after a divorce decree? Meaning, if you give Rachel a get and then you do chalitza with her, we should be worried that maybe you'll do chalitza with Rivka and then you'll do chalitza with Rachel. Well, that's so kol kihani tachlos v'sezel. Doesn't make a difference. You can do chalitza with as many women as you want. It doesn't change anything. Nobody has violated any prohibition. And similarly, ligzor chalitza achar mamar mishum chalitza achar bia. Should we prevent chalitza after mamar because of chalitza after bia? Again, atu chalitza amar mam achar mamar milo baya get lamamaro. Either way, the woman to whom mamar was done is going to require a get. So it doesn't make a difference if you do mamar with Rivka and then chalitza with Rachel. Rivka is going to need to be divorced. You've done a step towards marriage. You now need to undo that step with a get. And similarly, chalitza achar bia nami baya get leviato. Similarly, if you do chalitza after having done yibum, so if you do yibum with Rivka and then chalitza with Rachel, well, again, in order to separate from Rivka, you'll need a get. So there's no halachic difference. There's no reason to make any kind of decree. And so as a result, when it comes to chalitza, wherever chalitza happens, it ends. It is a full-fledged chalitza that stops all further actions from happening. And so as a result, a mamar after chalitza has no effect. So Rava now explains, my time at the Rabban Gamliel. What's the rationale of Rabban Gamliel? Rabban Gamliel was, again, the first opinion in our Mishnah, and Rabban Gamliel said, that get after get and mamar after mamar have no effect. So we're going to give two possibilities. The first one is from Rava, and then Abaye is going to question it and reject it and offer his own. So, so the answer number one is the misap golei. Get idachi ilo dachi. He was unsure whether get after get works or is not. And now we're getting on nun aleph amid aleph. Mamar ikani ilokani. And similarly, he was unsure. Does mamar actually create a full acquisition? Is it just like Yevamot, or is it nothing at all? And so as a result, because if you do get after get, so if the first one is valid, is fully valid, well, then the second one has no ramification. And if the first one is not valid, well, then again, the second one has no ramification. And similarly with mamar, the reason mamar after mamar doesn't work according to Rabban Gamliel, according to this understanding of Rava, is because if the first mamar was a fully valid yibum, well, then the second mamar, it doesn't have any effect, because once you've done yibum, there's no effect. And if mamar is in fact nothing, well, then mamar, the first mamar did nothing and the second mamar did nothing. So that could be the logic associated with it. So get idachi ilo dachi. So now we're going to explain it in detail. Ikama dachi, if the get constitutes a full rejection, so basra maika, but then the latter one is not doing anything. The ikame lo dachi, and if the first one has no effect and doesn't constitute any kind of chalitza, well, then basra nami lo dachi, the second one also has no effect. And mamar ikani ilokani, again, if mamar, either it does a full acquisition or it does nothing. So ikamakani, if the first one had made it for a full acquisition, well, then basra maika, the second one can't do anything because you've already done yibam. The ikamak lokani, and if the first one has no effect, well, then basra nami lokani. So that would be an explanation why mamar after mamar would not work, and get after get would not work, but mamar and get one after the other would be fine. Well, 1 second, actually, Eistei Rabaye, Umoda Rabban Gamliel, Sheyesh Get Achar Mamar or Mamar Achar Get. We have a brisa that says that Rabban Gamliel agrees that a get after mamar and a mamar after get both do have an effect. The get achar bia umamar achar get achar bia umamar achar bia the get. All of those have an effect. Now, if you, Rabba, say that in fact Rabban Gamliel was unsure to have a kiviyah at the end, he notes that if you have bia after if you have bia in the middle, so then that bia, that relationship that's performed after either mamar or get, should be like a relationship at the beginning, should be like having sexual relationships at the beginning, which causes yibum, right? The way we cause yibum is by having marital relations. And if mamar or get turns out not to have any effect whatsoever, well, then in that situation, the mamar, the bia is a fully valid bia. And so as a result, what we learned, but only when bia is in the beginning is there nothing after it. But if bia happens in the middle, then both Rabban Gamliel and the Chachamim say that it has, and that it doesn't have, it does have, let's just rephrase it right. So if in fact the logic of Rabban Gamliel is the fact that we're unsure whether mamar or get have any effect whatsoever, and maybe they have no effect, well then if one has relations not in the beginning, well then we should say that relations, that even if it's not in the beginning, maybe that relations should be treated as if it's in the beginning, because the act that happened before it had no effect whatsoever. And we said in our Mishnah that only when the cohabitation is at the beginning is there nothing that happens after it that has any effect. But when bia happens after some other action, we said that that there can be further actions that will have an effect, such as mamar. That if you do mamar, then bia, then mamar with three different co-wives, the third mamar does have an effect. But if the first mamar had no impact whatsoever, well then the bia should have been the first action. So we shouldn't have had. We should say that the bia should undo the first mamar. So okay. So Ella Amar Abaye LaOlam Pshita Leila Rabban Gamliel beget the Dachi Umamar Dekane me. That so it's clear that definitely a get does do some kind of rejection. It's not an uncertain situation. It's not maybe yes completely or maybe no at all, but rather it is definite, and but it's not full. So it's only to some extent. And a mamar that affects some aspect of marriage, it affects some marriage, but not a full marriage. So miu amarabanan. But when the rabbis said this, then and they again, this is not the chachamim. This is the rabbis who enacted the fact that mamar and get have some effect. When they said it, they said hayavama b'chad sad mahani b'get b'ukad sad mahani b'mamar. That a get only affects a little bit and not only a part of her. It's not a full rejection, and a mamar is not a full marriage. This is only a partial marriage. So as a result, get achar get lo duffy. If you have a get and then another get, kama, get after get, according to Rabban Gamliel, has no effect. And so as a result, because whatever rejection has happened has already happened, and there's no more rejection that can happen. Umamar achar mamar lo kani, and similarly, the second mamar has no effect. Kani le kama, because whatever mamar has already been able to do, it's already done. So get, however, when it comes to get achar mamar, umamar achar get, hi milsa kadachi. But when it comes to a get and then mamar, or mamar and then get, whatever happened, whatever rejection happened, well, hi milsa kakani, and now the acquisition happened. So the get and the mamar can happen one after the other, because they are happening, because they're not undoing the same thing. So as a result, the rejection happens, the partial rejection happens, and the partial acquisition happens. So it doesn't make a difference which order you do. If you do mamar to Rachel and then get to Rivka, or get to Rachel, or to get to Rachel and mamar to Rivka, doesn't make a difference. Both of them have an effect to Rabbi Gamliel. So v'Rabbanan, why do the rabbis say that mamar after mamar does work, and get after get also has an effect? So kol chad v'chad tekinu la Rabbanan get umamar b'Yevamot, because each and every action, each and every get action, and each and every Yevama action, they each have their own action with respect to that woman. And so as a result, that's why the rabbis say that even get after get can have an effect. So again, get after effect, get can have an effect, because when Shimon does get with Rachel, well, now when he then does get with Rivka, that second get is effective at rejecting an aspect of Rivka. And so as a result, each of Rachel and Rivka have now had an aspect of rejection. And so that is possible. It's not like he disagrees with the rabbis disagree with Rabbi Gamliel. Gamliel says, no, once you've done a rejection, that total rejection is finished and there's no more possibility for additional action. So now Abaye will conclude with this, V'hai bia psula. What about why was the bia, the relations that happens after a mamar, or I'm sorry, after a get, why is that not a full bia? Why do we treat that as an invalid bia, that so that if a mamar or a get happens after it, it's going to have additional effect, according to the rabbis? So adifa mamar ugriya mamar. That's because this relationship has an aspect that is stronger than mamar and an aspect that is weaker than mamar. Adifa mamar, it's weaker than mamar. De'ilu mamar, de'ilu mamar achar mamar lo mahani. That when it comes to mamar after mamar, we say that it's not effective. Now this is explaining again Rabbi Gamliel. De'ilu bia achar mamar mahani. But we do say that when it comes to bia after mamar, that works, right? We said that that does have an effect. So in that way, again, if you do mamar with woman number one and then mamar with woman number two, according to Rabbi Gamliel, mamar with woman number two does not work. However, if you do mamar with woman number one and then you do bia with woman number two, so now both of them have an aspect of marriage that's associated with it. So that is how bia is stronger than mamar. Ugriya mamar, and also, but at the same time, bia is weaker than mamar. De'ilu mamar achar get, because if you have mamar after a get, kani lechule shiyura de get. So then you've eliminated the whole aspect of get. De'ilu bia achar get, lo kanya lechule shiyura de get. If on the other hand you do bia after a get, you have not you've not gotten rid of the entire aspect of the get. And so as a result, when you do a second mamar now, so if you have get with woman number one, and then you do mamar with woman number two, so then a third mamar does not, the mamar with woman number three has no effect, according to Rabbi Gamliel. However, when it comes to bia, if you do get with woman number one, bia with woman number two, now mamar does have an effect with woman number three. And so in that way, get is weaker, bia is weaker than mamar, because whereas mamar with woman number two prevents any further mamar from having an effect when you have after the get. So here, though the get and then bia, mamar still does have an effect. If you have get with the widow number one, mamar with widow number two, mamar with widow number three doesn't work, but get with widow number one, bia with widow number two, and mamar with widow number three, that second mamar, that last mamar, the mamar with widow number three, that will have an effect. And so as a result, we see from the comparison of those two cases that bia in that case could actually be weaker. And we're going to be continuing to discuss this debate between Rabbi Gamliel and the rabbis, God willing, on Wednesday morning. So stay tuned, and we'll miss you tomorrow, and we'll look forward to continuing on Wednesday.
All right. Be well. Good trip. Safe trip.
Thank you so much. Be well.
See you soon.
Bye-bye.